This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 229, about Jessica Jones, season 3, episode 7, aka the double half Wappinger. Welcome back, fellow Defenders, to our 229th episode of Defenders TV Podcast. We're still talking about Jessica Jones, season 3, and we are loving it. We're on episode 7, aka the double half Wappinger. This is Derek, and I'm joined by my other host, Chris.
What's up, everybody?
We know what a Wappinger is now.
Exactly.
It's a small town.
Yeah, it took me a while. It still sounds quite juicy, and because we're recording before my dinner one night, it just sounds better and better each time.
Double half Wappinger. Nice.
Flame grilled now.
I do like that it's a double half, because a double half is a whole, right? So it's the same thing as a whole Wappinger.
Yeah. Oh, God. I didn't think about that, but yeah.
I'm guessing that his dad is not into wrestling the way that these two guys were.
No.
And you see the way I did that? Because I said it that way so you didn't know what the spoiler's about. This is our spoiler-filled discussion of episode 7 of season 3 of Jessica Jones. It is roasting here, so we may have to take a break about halfway through here for me to go and get some water. It's so hot, I've changed my headphones from my over-ear headphones to my in-ear ones because I sweat too badly with those in 37 degree temperatures. So this might either be a really quick one or we'll take a break, right?
Yeah, that sounds like a plan.
But, fellow Defenders, if you haven't registered for our proper podcast, the full list of all of our podcasts is available over on tvpodcastindustries.com. That's where we're doing all of our podcasting. We're about halfway through our final season of Defenders TV Podcast, our final talks about the Marvel Netflix shows, and we'll be moving on to some, I suppose, really interesting new shows and new stuff, new content on TV Podcast Industry. So make sure you subscribe to us over on tvpodcastindustries.com or search for us at TV Podcast Industries on any drunk or sober podcast catcher. Chris, what kind of stuff are we looking at in the next couple of weeks?
Well, just for our fellow Defenders, we will be doing Spider-Man Far From Home. Do not fear. You will get our review of that.
Yes.
But also, there is a beautiful superhero show on the way to Amazon called The Boys.
Yes, from Garth Ennis's The Boys. Yes, we're going to be covering The Boys coming out on the 28th of July. So that's going to be our next big comic book show. We are also, over on TV Podcast Industries, following up on our Gotham coverage with another uber-violent TV show in a completely different universe over in the DC universe. Pennyworth is coming out from the 28th of July as well. Going to be a really interesting one to check that out. This is the exact same criticism that was leveled at Gotham is being leveled at Pennyworth. Why do you need that? Well, I'm guessing the people that gave us 5 seasons, 100 episodes of Gotham are going to prove that for us. So we're looking forward to checking that one out. And you'll get all those episodes over on TV Podcast Industries.
I'm looking forward to it. I have to say, I'm not I wasn't a huge Gotham fan. I watched along. I obviously listened to my fellow co-hosts here, but it wouldn't been my go-to all the time. But I'm severely interested in Pennyworth. Although I will say, every time I hear the name of the show, I can't help but think of a very demonic alien clown. Pennywise,
yes. I think there's going to be definitely a lot of confusion with us when we're going to be talking about it. I'll give you a little hint, though. Paloma Faith is absolutely amazing, and I thought she was going to be terrible. So check the trailers out. Check out Paloma Faith. Her character of Beth is one of the villains in the upcoming show. Check out her trailers that are on there. See what you think. She's going to be someone to watch out for.
Yes, and of course, if you have any feedback on this show or any of our future shows, don't forget you can send us your emails at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com or feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into the details of this episode of Jessica Jones, season 3, episode 7, aka the double half Wappinger. Chris, do you want to tell us the episode details?
Yep. This one was written by Nancy Wan. She's done loads of other shows, including Supernatural, Being Human, and Jericho. But this is her first episode of Jessica Jones. But we will see her back, which I'm very excited for the finale, Everything.
the final episode of the season of Jessica Jones and all of the Defenders shows. That's kind of cool, isn't it?
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm noticing a big thread with obviously the teams behind Supernatural being human, because we've had some other writers and directors doubling over from those shows as well. And I have to say, I'm really interested to the point where I'm like, do I go back and watch Being Human US and UK? Do I go back and try and attempt going back to Supernatural from the beginning? What do you think, fellow Defenders? Is this something that I can put on in terms of everything else I watch? Is this something I should? Or is there particular episodes I should jump back in on? Let me know. But I have to say as well that this episode was directed by Larry Teng. This is his only Jessica Jones episode he directed, but he did direct Runaways Season 2, Episode 3, Double Zeros, which is a fantastic other Marvel-inspired show. He's directed other TV, included Arrow, Supergirl, The Walking Dead. He's currently working on a new version of another slightly less hard-boiled detective show, hopefully with less alcohol consumption as well. None other than Nancy Drew, which is due out later this year as well.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah, this is expected to be similar in style to like the Riverdale type, where it's kind of adulting up a kid's show, effectively. So you never know, there might be a bit of drinking in it.
There'll probably be a bit, probably not to the same level as Jessica, where she's sitting on a bed with her fifth of bourbon that day alone.
Her fifth, I like it.
Yeah, exactly. It's 4/5 of a bourbon.
It's kind of like a double half Wappinger right there.
Exactly. It's the only way.
Why measure that in fifths?
Exactly. Well, that's how we're going to do it from now on. All of the fifths. I have to say as well, you can definitely see some of the Arrow Supergirl, but the quite interesting parts, and especially the Walking Dead through lines and some of the shots he did.
Interesting.
Particularly, I'll jump into one part later on where you can definitely see the caped vigilante darkness of Arrow.
Oh, yes.
But before I get into our case notes, and specifically that point, Derek, do you want to give us the synopsis?
Sure. Jessica Jones and Trish Walker watch on as Salinger walks away scot-free from the police with a little help from Jerry Hogarth. Jerry needs to divert attention from her business problems, so puts Salinger in front of the media to get his side of the story out there. Salinger uses this time in the spotlight to reveal the second super vigilante who attacked him. While everyone is trying to work out who it could be, Jessica and Trish go to his hometown of Wappinger Falls to investigate the beginnings of a serial killer. They had the victim wrong, but the crime right, as the duo reveal the long-covered grave of Greg Salinger's first murder. Now, this felt like a detective show, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. This felt like almost like a part 2 of a season without actually officially ramping down enough to be part 2 of a season.
Yeah.
They didn't, it's not like they had a pause. It just really, really felt, it felt like that, okay, we need to get back to the drawing board in the case. And it's like, okay, we're going to put the feet on the ground. This is how we're going to do it. Yeah. And it felt good to do that thorough lane, kind of slow down episode, but without, as I said, putting on the brakes too hard.
Absolutely. And one of the pleasures, really, of these third seasons of these shows, Jessica Jones and Daredevil are the only ones that made it to their third season. One of the pleasures of them is that they've been able to leave the city of New York and go out and see some various small towns, which are probably very close to New York. For a foreigner like us, we don't really notice that, but it's nice to see them kind of branching out of New York for a little while to get away from the city, and it's kind of cool. Let's get into our case notes for this week, Chris, with case note number 1, Hogarth's new client. What do you think of this bit?
So this was interesting. We've spoken before about how Jerry's downfall this season alone, she's acting completely in character, but also not in character. If you like, we started seeing some redemption arcs of Jerry over the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And this is very much reminding you, no. Jerry Hogarth is Jerry Hogarth.
Yep. It's about her business and her business alone. We didn't even mention it last week. There was that whole kind of scene with Jerry and Zaya in the office. We didn't really mention it last episode, but they have that conversation with Jessica where Jessica talks about Salinger and the fact that he is a murderer, and then Jerry goes, I want all of his information. I want all of his details. It is really important to know, and Jerry points it out quite strongly here. If you think her business isn't important to her and she will let it die without a fight, you don't know Jerry Hogarth.
Yeah, this is her legacy. Like, this company is going to be what she cares about and what she leaves behind.
Yeah.
As we see Jerry's degradation from her illness. Mm-hmm. This is putting it more in front for her, and potentially the death of her new love, in terms of that relationship is now gone.
Yeah.
It was just interesting, but specifically going back to her taking on Salinger, and that first bit where we get where she walks out of the courthouse with Trish and Jess there watching, which, by the way, apparently being super means you also have super hearing, because they're across the other side of the road listening, and they're not shouting. But anyway.
Everybody gets super listening. It's just the basics of their superpowers, Chris.
Yes, exactly. It's just like, can you listen as well as you can watch? Yes, you can. Then you're a superhero.
They can all read lips. That's all it is. But there is some lovely touches in here. You know, obviously, a big shock, really, that Hogarth's going to defend someone as awful as this. Like, she's worked with Jessica for years and does genuinely trust Jessica's opinion and Jessica's version of a story. She will give her the benefit of the doubt for the most part. Like, we hear her using that word allegedly a number of times in this episode. Once again, this famous lawyer word where they're saying, I don't really care if he's innocent or guilty. We can use Salinger, this serial killer. We can use his high profile to get our business out of the dirt. So I don't want anybody to talk about his innocence or guilt around me. But there are a couple of clues very quickly in that she may have put her trust in the wrong person. We hear Salinger go on screen in front of the television cameras and talk about Jessica maybe being a feminist vindicator, you know, and this idea that maybe the two of them are taking back the night. You know, we see this reaction from Jerry kind of going, maybe they are, and that's not a bad thing. Don't turn it into a bad thing. And Salinger talking about the fact that he's aiming for the base audience that watches these news programs. It's an interesting pairing already between these two characters.
Yeah, and also, like, we straight away see Salinger sizing up Jerry and essentially going, no, I know about you, blah, 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 you need to earn my trust before jumping into his Uber. Yeah. And that straight away starts ringing alarm bells, but not for Jerry. And even later on, when Isaiah and Salinger and Jerry are in their client meeting, he starts rattling off their records to a degree. This should be ringing every alarm bell in the world for Jerry, but it's not, because what she's seeing is the potential to advance her business.
Absolutely.
Or at least save her business.
And you're right, it really should be ringing alarm bells. It definitely rings alarm bells for me. I'm wondering, we're on final season now. We know the show finished with everybody knowing the show was over and the series was done. Is this the big alarm bell here? Is this, will Hogarth survive the season? Should we be worried for Jerry Hogarth? He specifically says, and we talked about it last episode, Chris, he specifically says that she needs to prove herself to him because he's read her background, he knows what she's capable of, and if he doesn't work that hard for her, he may think of her as a person of advantage in her privilege. And people that have advantage in their privilege, well, he takes them out. That's his person that he goes after. So do you think there's any possibility that Hogarth could be on the chopping block?
Oh, 100%. 100%. All it's going to take is that he finds some shred of proof in his eyes that she got an unfair advantage from someone who is richer than she or richer than he or whatever. Particularly, like, if Daniel Rand's, if the Rand contract and it came out that he was Iron Fist or something along those lines, like, it can be devastating for her. And I think that might be a fitting end to Jerry, in that she could get some form of redemption at her last moments. Okay. So almost like, because we know she knows she is dying. She's talked to Jessica about ending it. But what about if her going on her own terms in the point where she saves Trish or Zaya or Jess? Right. Like, she not jumping in front of a bullet, but essentially that in kind of written words, if you will. Right. Like, jumping on the grenade to save other people.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of feel like it's most likely going to be connected with this Peter and Kith storyline. We have another moment here, two moments actually in this episode, where Zaya says that Hogarth has sent a text message to Zaya by mistake about Kith. That's one instance where we know she's still absolutely obsessed with Kith, and then we get another moment later on in the episode when there's a phone call that Jerry gets, and it turns out to be a telesalesperson, but she thinks it's Kith. It could be Kith because it's a hidden number on the other end of the phone. These two things keeping that whole storyline back top of mind now that Hogarth is working with Salinger, and now that Salinger is investigating Hogarth, kind of get the feeling if he learns that she has used her point of privilege to break up a marriage and try and take her ex-lover back, that may be something that might push Salinger to target Hogarth. But we'll see. Yeah, it would be an interesting one. Mm-hmm. But that does kind of lead us into like kind of the next part of of this case note, which is Zaya alone, right? Mm-hmm.
So Zaya is being trained and molded by Jerry.
Yeah,
and it's becoming more and more evident that she emulates everything that Jerry is and how she was and can be.
Yeah.
So when Jerry pushes her to investigate the alleged other vigilante, she kind of goes really deep on this.
Absolutely.
And she even mentions her alone, like in that the 5 clients she's found, including the young date rapist, that they weren't good people, but they were still our clients, and they all mentioned this woman, this mass vigilante.
Yeah.
And so Jerry makes the connection, basically, that they're going after us. They're literally targeting us. Go investigate this. Zaya goes, what about Malcolm? He's our lead. And she goes, no, I want you on this alone.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that Jerry's already feeling or sensing something with Malcolm, that he's a bit off with her. That whole piece, and we'll talk about him next, really, but that whole piece gives her enough to go, Zaya, go investigate this alone because Malcolm may be covering something up here, kind of thing. Zaya does find out. She does find the CCTV footage of Malcolm. Unfortunately, the camera's the opposite direction, so she doesn't see who the masked vigilante is. It could be anybody in the entire city of New York, basically, but what she does know is Malcolm is working with the vigilante. Yeah,
and it's a nice way to question how that ends. Luckily, we don't see it's Trish.
Mm-hmm.
So I was glad about that. You didn't get that as she turned to the camera and to jump out the window, and then her mask is still off, and it's like freeze frame, enhance.
It's Patsy.
Yeah. Oh, Patsy, what are we going to do with you?
But let's take it on with Malcolm. Let's go on to case note number 2. Malcolm is sliding backwards. Just to kind of fill in, I suppose, the patches around Hogarth stuff with Malcolm, because he has come back to the office after that awful ending to the last episode where he's sank to his lowest low, really.
Yeah, and that was a tough ending.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, we do see him lament on that to a degree, which is interesting. And you can see that he is he regrets his decision, which, fine. Okay, so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, he wasn't quick to admit what he did at all, and, it is a decision. He wasn't really protesting very much either, right?
No, and it's the question of whether is he just sorrowful or is there actual regret, and what would he do with it?
Well, I will point out, actually, there is a piece of feedback that we've got. In case we forgot, Malcolm did become a sex addict in season 2, so he does have form in this area where sex does take over from relationships quite quickly at times if he allows it to. So just in case we forgot, that is a kind of a history of Malcolm's after the drug addiction. There was a bit of sex addiction in season 2 as well. So interesting to see that they're keeping that as part of his character in this season as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that is true. So that is part of it. At the same time, he also then is trying to do this, I'm going to be better.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So he arrives to the office just in time to meet with Salinger himself, with Jerry and Zaya, which is an interesting meeting, especially because I think Salinger doesn't have the measure of him, and I think you even see Salinger, I don't like people being there that I haven't investigated.
Absolutely, yeah. Like that, he's a concerning man overall, and I think Jerry has that arrogance about her that she feels she can handle him. Zaya has obviously dealt with clients like him before who were hugely precious about their privacy and do investigate the people that are going to be dealing with them, but when Malcolm overhears him breaking everything that he knows about Jerry and about Zaya, that has him in the room instantly. And the back is up immediately as well. He's saying to him, I'm an open book, just ask me any questions, kind of thing. It's really interesting to see Malcolm just be this massively protective person. we hear from Jerry kind of saying to him, if you have an opinion, keep it to yourself. That's not your job.
Yeah.
So, and we hear a little bit of that from Zaya as well. You know, it's kind of a thing where they're all saying to him, your job is not to have an opinion about who we hire as clients or which clients hire us and who we take on board. Your job is to do your job, and that's it.
Yeah, and then luckily he uses that approach then. He turns around back to Jerry and goes, my job is risk mitigation. Mm-hmm. And so he basically agrees that he's going to look into Salinger, and that everyone agrees, Jerry, the whole lot. So this is what leads him to this, okay, I'm going to go in and really deep down look into who Salinger is and what his potentials are. Mm-hmm. So he does, first thing he does, he goes to Jessica.
I know.
Jessica's not there.
Yep.
And we get this great scene with Gillian.
She is just hilarious. I absolutely love this moment when he sticks his head out the door and scares her in the hallway and then follows her into the office and she goes, look, you used to do this job. If someone gave you nearly a heart attack in the hallway and didn't even apologize about it and then said, Jessica will be okay with me looking through her files, what would you do?
I have to say, I love Gillian's character. Mm-hmm. And I really wish... Oh, of course, I wish for another season of Jessica Jones, mm-hmm. but I would love to see this character of Gillian become more prevalent.
Definitely.
It's just, she's a comic relief. She's a comic relief so much in this, and it's brilliant. There's one scene, which I'll talk about in a second, mm-hmm. when Jessica's leaving the office.
Yep.
And she gives her the...
hand sanitizer?
The hand sanitizer, going, you won't know it's on the pumps. And she goes, remember, super... And Jessica puts it back, and then she goes, well, actually, hold on.
It can't hurt.
Yeah, it's just...
But I love the confidence of Gillian in that scene as well. When Jessica hands it back to her, she just puts it further out on her desk so that Jessica has easy access to it, because she knows she's right.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Really
but
good.
getting back to the Malcolm scene, like, she's standing up to this, albeit beautiful man, as she says.
Yeah.
But she stands up to him and stops him, like taking the photos and everything, and forces him to call Jessica, which we end up getting Trish.
Yeah.
And then she gives the commentary for when Malcolm's not speaking, which was brilliant. Which was like, what was it? Yeah, he's looking very sullen, or his look says right now that he's agreeing with Ford. And it's just like, okay, this is brilliant.
Yeah, I think Trish asks, but you're on the payroll of Jerry Hogarth, and he doesn't say anything, and Gillian says, his body language says he is, and then a little bit later on, she says, his body language says, you're treating me like a child, I don't deserve to be treated like a child at all. Really, really fun moments from Gillian. But just an interesting one to call out, really, that Malcolm is so on board with this attack on Salinger, I suppose, that he's willing to go and investigate this whole thing on behalf of Jerry, basically, but what he wants to do is take him down. He doesn't want to prove to Jerry that he's an okay stand-up guy. He wants to prove to Jerry that he's not. He's a serial killer. So, again, I'll ask the question, because we're on episode 7. I'll ask the question, does this, again, put him in the sights of Salinger's? He's not had the greatest of life in the past. We know he's had his drug addict time. He's done some pretty bad things in season 2. He's definitely doing some pretty bad things in this season as well on behalf of Hogarth. So, is he taking advantage? Will he be seen by Salinger as being another person that's taking advantage of their position or had advantage getting into their position?
No, I think he's safe. I do think that his position with Hogarth is bad. Mm-hmm. It's on the rocks. I see him. He said, like, what I do in the was basically saying something along the line. What I do in the daytime is up to me, is up to her, but what I do outside of that is my own business.
Yeah.
It's basically like Hogarth and Co. It's a firm that pays his bills.
There's certain things he has to do to live his life. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the rest he's doing because it's what's right.
But I do wonder, as I say, same question, I suppose, over the release of that information about Peter. If Salinger thinks that's bad enough, will that push Malcolm in the sight, since he's the one that did the investigation and found the information? So we'll see. I suppose, it's one of these things, one of these open questions we have for the rest of the series, because nothing makes a serial killer more threatening than when they're after your central characters, right?
But one thing I will say is no one is safe.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
No one. So I can honestly see everyone bar Jessica Jones dying. like in every single possible way.
There you go.
And that's the truth. It could be everyone's on the chopping block because you do have a purely psychotic, gifted, and I don't mean gifted in terms of special, I mean gifted in terms of intelligence, etc.
Yeah.
Serial killer.
You used the word that he hates most, didn't you, there? Gifted.
Exactly.
He's never been gifted with anything. He fought for everything, Chris. Let's get on to a visit to his hometown, because this is another part of his episode, this building up of the case against Salinger and building up of the information behind Salinger, I suppose. So our case note number 3 is the road trip to Wappinger Falls. This is the piece you talked about, Chris. This opening to this scene really is the arrival of Trish and Jessica back to the office after that big expose on TV with Gillian on the phone, right?
Yeah, and it was brilliant. So we get the, hold please, no, hold please, well, you don't have a choice, hold please. And it's brilliant.
I love that she keeps twisting Jessica's phrases because she knows Jessica so well. This thing where she calls over to Jessica going, look, they keep asking about this massive vigilante. What do you want me to tell them? Jessica goes, Salinger is a liar. And Gillian goes back on the phone going, Jessica doesn't like anyone enough to take on a partner. Really good. And it's just that really good turn of phrase. Gillian is that type of person, where she just will tell people like it is. She's the perfect foil to Jessica Jones.
Yeah. And we get that great scene where we do, after that, see Jessica's detective skills really coming again to the foreground. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons I'm really happy with this season so far, which is it's a noir detective story again. Like, not that it wasn't previously, it's just that thread, that theme, that kind of genre is being pulled a bit more into the forefront.
Yeah, absolutely.
And seeing Jessica basically zero in on, okay, well, we know we can't get him for any of these deaths, but he's a serial killer. He didn't learn it straight away. He had to have started somewhere. And zeroing in on, well, Salinger's brother died in an accident, but what if it wasn't? And that leads to, okay, let's go to Wappinger Falls.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you, Chris. This whole idea of bringing this detective stuff back in, this concept of the two of them having absolutely no leads. Trish, as we talked about last episode, bouncing around going, right, what's next? Where are we going next? What are we doing next? Oh, we're just going to sit down and stare at the wall. Is that what we're doing, Jessica? Is that what we're doing? And it goes back into that detective stuff. This is what Jessica Jones is around for. I'm rereading the most recent run by Kelly Thompson of Jessica Jones. I'm rereading that at the moment. And it's very clear throughout that book that Jessica Jones is an investigator. This is what her special power is. It's not anything that's enhanced by her superpowers at all. She can basically punch someone if they throw a punch at her, but her actual thing that she's really good at is investigating things. And sometimes that doesn't stand out in the show. Here, I think it absolutely stands out. She may get it wrong, but she's willing to follow a lead that she thinks will get them back on the path of Salinger. And the lead here is the tractor flipped over on Salinger's brother from 15 years beforehand.
Yeah, and the question is, was he involved? Was this his first issue? So they get to Wappinger Falls, and it's okay, we need to see these records, and we do see Jess try to pull her PI card out, and we get introduced to Police Officer Velasco.
Yes. I love this. I really like the idea. Obviously you've told someone that you're coming down from Jessica Jones's office in New York to have those files ready. Well, it's the internet. It gets everywhere in the world. You just search up Salinger and Jessica Jones. I presume that comes up with the video footage from the TV service, Not that difficult. But I like this idea that she's getting to this small town that everybody here seems to have a problem with her. Nobody is giving her really any help. This is something that you'll actually see in Supernatural quite a lot, Chris. If you ever get past, season 1 or 2, you'll see them traveling to small towns all the time and everybody getting pissed off with people getting in their business, basically. But once you add in superpowers like Jessica Jones, well, you're going to have this bit where they just push back and go, get out of our town kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the whole small town mentality. Like, I'm the cop, I know everyone. This is obviously quite a staple of, we hear Midwest, the US. It's kind of like the towns as big as 2,000 people kind of thing. Yeah. Everyone knows everyone's business.
And don't get me wrong, I totally understand if somebody walked into my job and said to me, I think you did a really bad job of that 15 years ago. Give me your files and I'll fix it. Yeah, they're going to be thrown out in their ass pretty quickly.
Well, not Jessica.
No, not at all. She does probably I think the funniest moment of the season so far, with sending a text to Trish, who's been sitting outside in the car, saying Patsy needs a meltdown, as Trish sets off the alarms in the car. I think this is hilarious just because of how Trish plays at this blonde bimbo routine, as she calls it herself, where she's just going, I'm psychologically shutting down by this noise. This is really triggering for me. Where she's just playing that.
That line alone
it's hilarious.
Brilliant. This is triggering me. I'm like, oh my God.
It's brilliant just that she's playing that Hollywood starlet stuck in a small town and can't do anything for herself. Seems to play the part pretty well, like.
Yeah. And with that, then, we see Jessica grab the files, which is great. And we get this great scene where they're sitting in their hotel room discussing and going through and trying to figure out if it was possible that did he do it. And they come to the conclusion, no, that most likely the tractor death was an accident.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Like, we had a quick discussion about this last week just from the conversation that Salinger had with Eric when he had him tied up, where we assumed, because everybody does, oh yeah, he killed his brother, that's what happened. So I'm glad they kind of took us on that journey in this investigation to show you why he didn't do it, really. It was only after his brother died that his father started turning on him. And that seems to be part of what pushed Salinger over the edge to start this path, I guess. At the very least, he was coming from a home where things weren't going very well for him. And he didn't have any kind of support structure at home.
Yeah, and I think it's then the later investigation that really probably instilled in him this thing about gifted people.
Exactly.
Not earning it. But before we get there, we did get this great scene between Trish and Jess about superheroes and the superhero identity and living this double life.
Yeah.
And what do you think about this?
I really like this take from Trish because she's still trying to sort out what way she wants to do this. She knows, because of what happened to her at the beginning of the season, in episode 2, I think, where she didn't have a mask on and everybody saw her and it was like, oh, that's Patsy. And that's why she got served by the lawyers to pay off some guy who she beat up. So she can't uncover her face. But she does have this big problem hiding the secret identity. She compares it to when she was a superstar and was drug addicted for years, had gone in and out of rehab 4 or 5 times, and when it was eventually revealed to the public, she actually says, despite it taking a big toll in her life, there was a huge weight lifted from herself. So it's quite interesting to have that discussion. There's a number of these different characters who walk around freely in the streets, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones among them. But Trish is not going to be able to be somebody like that because she had this past as a star. And you wonder whether at some point is she going to, I don't know, crack this big case and suddenly reveal, oh, actually, it was Patsy that did that, and try and embrace this new identity. I don't think that's going to work out too well for her either. But it's an interesting discussion. Yeah.
So I found it very, as you said, interesting. I think this is potentially trying to signpost an issue with Patsy, with Trish, in that if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did you really push over a tree?
Yeah. That's what she's feeling at the moment, yeah. That's absolutely what she's feeling at the moment. And that's what Jessica has kind of says that she always puts up with for the rest of her life. It does, as I think I said back 2 or 3 episodes ago, Trish wants to be there to get the plaudits. Trish wants to be there to be the superhero that has the key to the city given to her because of her heroic deeds. None of these shows have had any heroes have gotten that kind of plaudits. Not even Luke Cage, who was the savior of Harlem. He never really got to a level where everybody in the city was loving what he was doing. People like it, people don't like it. But I think Trish has this unrealistic expectation for where she thinks her powers are going to take her.
Yeah, she wants to be the Captain America.
Mm-hmm. But there's only one Captain America, and he doesn't dress like that, Chris.
That is true, but he's in the public eye.
Sure.
And he's so lauded about who he is and what he does. And I think that's signposting a potential thing with Trish. Yeah. In that, if we see later on in the episode, she calls in a tip about herself so she can get the paparazzi to take a photo of her. Now, it's the best Dark Knight impression I've seen in a long time.
It's really good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I loved that. I think it was included in one of the trailers, actually, sadly. I know you don't watch all the trailers, Chris, so it's all right. But that moment where she jumps from the top of the bridge to the ground is awesome. It's really cool, and gets the guy to photograph her while she's doing it. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's just but it's Patsy as well, which is she poses.
Yeah.
She stands up and then does the back, my back, and then I'm going to look back at you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think this also leads to a particular issue, which is for someone who's been in the limelight, who's always been the center of attention, can that person ever truly become obscure?
Yeah.
And enjoy it? And what happens if they don't care? What happens if the papers go, well, it's just another vigilante. Man, she gets her 5 minutes of fame and then it's gone. We know Patsy has a addictive personality.
Mm-hmm.
Will this lead to her taking more risks, looking for that greater high, that greater accolade from the public? Could this lead to problems?
Absolutely.
In the future with Salinger? Will she try and take Salinger in by herself against the rules and then become more than a vigilante? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, I can see this escalating.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I'm wondering if this is where they're trying to subtly signpost it.
Oh, this is absolutely the moment where you realise Trish is basically saying, this is not going to be a secret identity for me. So I think she even calls it out to Jessica, where she says, if 90% of your day-to-day is your life, well, that becomes your life. This 10% that is me as a superhero, that's not what I want to be. I want those to be flipped around. So, yeah, absolutely. She wants to be in the public eye as Hellcat, effectively, as this other version of herself with her superpowers. She wants to be out there. So, pretty interesting to see how this might go. And as I say, once again, the question's there. Does this put her on the radar of Salinger? She's another powered person. He didn't know who she was beforehand, but taking a couple of photographs, as you said, click close and enhance. Do we see the jawline of Trish Walker, who effectively accompanies Jessica Jones everywhere she goes anyway at the moment? So will it be a huge hop, step, and a leap to catch who this person is? It'd be interesting to see, and whether Salinger goes after her. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, and I'm interested to see, as you said, where it goes. Mm-hmm. But look, let's jump on to our next point in the case notes, which is the suspicious gazebo.
Mm-hmm. Yes. They were intended to investigate the death of Salinger's brother, as we thought he may have murdered him, but come across the best friend and wrestling partner of Greg Salinger, Nathan Silva. This is another really good investigation. This really does strike me as Jessica Jones' comic book version of Jessica Jones, where she goes in and investigates something not necessarily the main point of the show, a kind of an offshoot to the show, but it is really important to her investigations into Salinger, obviously, to find the first person that he killed.
Yeah, and I really enjoy this part. Mm-hmm. It does take Jessica to Nathan's parents' house, and we get this really, again, that dichotomy of the father who's happy someone's looking into it, and the mother who doesn't trust the superpowered person who's just coming in and digging up the past.
Yeah, and also I think it feels like Nathan's mother has accepted that he's gone for good. They've had the FBI, they've had the police force in investigating, and this is just another person turning it over again. They've had the press in before doing the investigations. It feels like she's going, look, you can't do anything for me. He's gone and not coming back. Even if he's not dead, he doesn't want to be here, basically. So it seems like she's at least made that decision to move on, and that's why I suppose as the story goes on, that's why it's even more heartbreaking to see her reaction. Yeah,
because we do learn interesting information here.
Mm-hmm.
We start again to get this picture of Salinger, especially because it boils back down to the gifted aspect.
Yeah.
Because him and Nathan were besties for the whole time until Nathan started getting offers from scouts for his father, his gifts in wrestling. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be where the split started to happen between these two besties.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the fact that they'd gone through high school together, both been on the same wrestling team and made up moves together. This is where we get the double half Wappinger moment where he says that's a move that they created together, that Greg and Nathan created when they were kids wrestling together. And then it's Nathan is the one that everybody's looking at to move on and do this as a professional career, not Greg. So, it does seem to rile him up enough to kill Nathan, I guess.
Yeah, but we also get... he left a calling card. He left a trophy. So he leaves a photo he gave a photo to Nathan's parents, which is a picture of Nathan standing where the gazebo is.
Yeah.
And on the back of the photo it says, "He will always be with you."
How harsh. Like, how brutal do you have to be to really rub it in their parents' face, you know? I know, and don't get me wrong, I do understand this was a little bit shortcut with Jessica doing the investigation. I can sense some complaints probably coming in about this scene where Jessica fixes and solves this murder that happened when nobody else could for 15 years. And the only question she asks was, hang on a second, when was that gazebo built? Oh, the day he died. Interesting. Owen Salinger built it. Interesting. He's under that, basically. She solves it in about 3 minutes, and this would probably sustain an entire season of How to Get Away with Murder.
Yeah.
But I liked it. I like that we do get this. There's so much that needs to be told in this story. So this scene and these moments, I think, while it is shorthand, I think it's really good.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Look, they needed to do bits of shorthand in this, but it was very, very quick. But again, the Wappinger police force, they sometimes let things slide. Yeah. Sometimes it's just, we won't go too far into it. But I loved this scene. Like, the following 3 minutes is perhaps some of the best in this season for me. Right. Because we see Jessica burst her way through to, after being confronted by the police, which most likely Nathan's mother calls. Yeah. It's the same officer from earlier, which is Velasco, and Jessica just plows by her straight into the back, goes to the gazebo, and we see this whole point, like, Velasco's going, "Stop what you're doing, stay where you are," blah, blah. And Jess is just constantly going, to the point where then, I know it's quite a small thing, but her lifting the gazebo and just flipping it, for me, I was like, that's nice, it looks good. It didn't look cheesy. Absolutely. And then just the pounding on the solid cement. Yeah. It was just, and like the whole time seeing Velasco yelling at her, like pulling out her weapon, screaming at her to stand up and put her hands up and telling her to back away, getting more aggravated to the point where I was pretty sure she was going to fire the weapon. Yeah. Until Trish turns up and pulls out her phone. Ah, the power of the media once again. Yeah. This is Trish's whole act now, isn't it? Yeah. Although I did very much see there was a bit of a political dig on this one. Very much like, most likely the police would have shot Jessica if the camera wasn't on them. Yeah. And that's very much a current 2018 political thing. Oh, there's a few in this episode. Did you get the very unshocking one where Jessica says, "You're a super now, you can eat whatever you want, maybe a Cheeto," and Trish says, "I hate everything that orange"? That's a definite political dig there, isn't it? Oh, and then even the steps, the feminist vindicator, take back the night. Oh, but that's the show. It always has been that way for the last 3 years. It's always had this political undercurrent from everybody involved. You know, it wouldn't be the show if Jessica didn't stand up for people's rights, without a doubt. But no, it is a really interesting one. And as I mentioned, that moment where Nathan's mother realizes that his body's inside the wrestling bag that Jessica finds underneath the gazebo it's brutal. Like, it is really tough. As she realizes that her child has been right outside her door all those years. It's awful. Oh, that was heartbreaking. Yeah. Just heartbreaking. And when you continue to see the wailing mother, and then the bag being pulled out and put onto the cart, and then the slow-mo open of the bag to see the skull with the hair. I was just like, ouch.
Yeah. Really well filmed. Really good.
But it does lead us to the first confirmed kill of Salinger. Now, fingers crossed, he was messy or sloppy because it was the beginning.
Yeah.
It was like they always hopefully make mistakes at the beginning.
Yeah. And it does seem like it must have come as a crime out of nowhere, really. You know, you'd assume. But, yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to trust that they have enough evidence to take down Salinger now. You know, this is taking him down with his first ever crime. Maybe he's left enough DNA, maybe not. So we'll hopefully see the outcome of that next episode.
I'm hoping so, because that does lead us into our fifth and final case note, which is never wrestle Jessica.
It's never a good idea, is it?
No, never. We've seen so many people try and so many people fail.
Absolutely.
And Salinger is just one of those.
Absolutely. And we see Jessica and Malcolm arriving almost together at the community centre, the Willie Dance Community Centre, where Salinger's giving his wrestling lessons to kids. And I love the seething rage from Malcolm as he's watching on, kind of going, they're letting him around kids. Like today, he was released by police under the assumption that he's a free man and they don't have enough evidence to convict him of being a serial killer. But that was today. That's like 6 hours ago or 10 hours ago that this happened, you know? He's absolutely filled with rage, and Jessica arrives, and as they have that conversation, you can see that Jessica's filling up with rage as well herself, and she can't resist the invitation from Salinger to come inside and effectively have their standoff. There's definitely a touch of Captain Marvel in here. I was really seeing at these moments where Salinger is pushing her, telling Jessica that she can't possibly beat him without using her ill-gotten powers. Effectively, you just sit there and just take a pounding from me because I'm a trained wrestler for the last 25 years and you're not allowed to use any of your powers or anything that you've invested your life in. So I'm really glad that Jessica flips it and flips him.
Yeah. I didn't know how this was going to play out. Mm-hmm. Because you had the parents all around the ring filming it.
Yeah.
And then the kids. And I did think he might say something, as he being Salinger, that would throw off Jessica.
Right.
That Jessica... Because Jessica has not always been the most stable.
Oh, not at all.
But the interesting thing is, she now is.
Yeah.
Like, they built her up, and she's becoming what I always read her being in the comics, which is, yeah, she has an angry streak. Yeah, she has demons and problems, but she's able to control them when necessary.
Yeah.
And release them when necessary. And so this is brilliant because she uses, although potentially tipping her hat before she should.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is my opinion, she shouldn't have potentially said this because now he's going to be able to go and build up a defense.
Well, exactly, yeah. So she reveals to him that she knows about Nathan's murder and knows that he's the one that did it by saying to him, is this the hold that you had on Nathan before you killed him? It completely throws off Salinger for that moment, and then she just beats him down. I like that she knows she's being filmed. I like that that's all been laid out for her. She's saying to him, you know that if I beat you to a pulp, effectively, then you're just going to take this and bring it to your lawyer and accuse me of beating you up. But since everything's being filmed here and we're having this conversation, we're having a wrestling match. And then she just walks away when she does that one body slam on him, which is awesome. It's very cool. But she can't win the fight, but she does at least get the opportunity to effectively cheat and body slam him. And
gets the crowd going.
Oh yeah, the kids love it.
And this for me was the best part because she leaves it at that. She has her foot on him, tells him it's coming to an end, and walks away. Doesn't let the anger go.
Absolutely.
And the kids scream, and she's still deadpan Jessica, and then we see the crack of the smile.
Yeah.
Which ends the episode. And for me, this was a bit, you're smiling a bit too early. You've just let the cat out of the bag.
Yeah.
but okay, I'll let you have this moment because it was pretty damn cool.
Absolutely. She's riding a little bit high on getting the thank you from the local police officer in his hometown, right? She's gotten a thank you for the first time. We get that kind of conversation between herself and Trish afterwards where she's going, well, that's happened once, it'll happen again. And Jessica going, I don't care what people think about me, but she does. We know that. These are things that Jessica says to cover up her real feelings and to protect herself from anybody treating her badly. She just says she doesn't care. This is something that she's built up all the way back to Kilgrave and how he used to treat her, and this is how she's created this crusty exterior that nobody can penetrate effectively. But she takes a little bit of pleasure in the fact that these kids are on her side. It's almost, I was kind of wondering, did they just dislike Salinger, or is this just the thing of seeing something funny bad happen to one of your teachers? And I think it's the second, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because she doesn't hurt him.
Yeah.
As much as she could.
She just beats him at wrestling, right? With a slight cheat.
But I also see that potentially, much like he already kind of goaded her into you saw how he was betraying himself after coming out of the cops with the bandages and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I can very much see him suddenly coming in the next episode with in a wheelchair with two neck braces and an arm in a cast and his other hand in a sling going, I was flipped and destroyed, blah blah blah.
Maybe, and I don't know whether you'll take it that far. And I just purely because of all the parents who were filming it, because he does know that if there's footage out there, that's what he says to Jessica. If there's footage out there, he'll use it against her. So she'd do the same, basically. So I don't know whether you'll take it that far. I do wonder though if all of this was being done by Jessica to say, come at me, not anybody else. I wonder if Jessica's putting herself up front and going, I don't care who else you want to go after, you should be after me because I am the cheater amongst us all. I am exactly the kind of target that you want, so that she can kind of take him off the street in a way, make her his next plan. It would be a plan from Jessica, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Might be a way to go.
Yeah. So look, that wraps up our case notes for this episode. Do you have any notes on the episode as a whole?
This sucks. Poor John hasn't been here for 2 episodes, and for 2 episodes we haven't had any Whiskey Watch. I'm really sorry, fellow defenders. I know how much you all love it. But when John comes back, we'll see if he can go back through the episodes and see any whiskey that we might have missed.
That sounds about fair to me. Let's get him to do some homework while he's away on his jollies.
Exactly.
Well, he's not away on his jollies. I should put that out there. If he was away on his jollies, he'd still make this work. He's just got other commitments at the moment.
Exactly. But he will be back for the next episode, I believe, so hopefully we'll have some Whiskey Watch then. There's no other particular notes for this episode, though.
So let's jump straight back into our defense.
Yeah.
Derek, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
Oh, yes, absolutely defend this episode. This is a really, really good episode. Again, so much of our investigative Jessica Jones in here, and so much intrigue about what's going to happen now that Salinger is in amongst all of our major characters now. He's working alongside our new characters, Zaya and Malcolm and Hogarth. And he does seem to have a bit of a thing for Jessica Jones and finding out who this masked vigilante is, which to me means all 5 of those people are on the chopping block. They could, all 5 of them, possibly be future victims for Salinger, so it makes the next couple episodes of Jessica Jones really interesting for me. I really highly defend this episode. Chris, how about yourself? Do you defend Jessica Jones Season 3, Episode 7?
Yeah, I really do. As I said, this episode felt like a part 2 of a season, but didn't slow down enough that usually a similar series would do. So we've always talked about quite a lot. Sometimes there is lull and filler in some of the Marvel, Netflix, MCU kind of seasons. I've yet to feel that. This felt like, okay, we're just on to part 2, but we're going to keep it at the same pace that it's at. Now, they literally took the story out of New York, but it still gave us that it moved the story along on each of the main characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is really, really interesting. Similar to you, I think everyone's on the chopping block. But more importantly, I'm really interested to see where they'll take it.
Absolutely.
How those people will either survive or not survive.
Yeah.
So 100% defend this episode and really just want to get really into it.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. Let's get on to some feedback for episode 6. We'll do this quickly because it is still really hot, and we're both melting. So we got some feedback in on episode 6. First up, Mike in Cleveland, who says, wow, on a regular broadcast TV show, this would clearly have been the mid-season finale, and we would have had to suffer for weeks of waiting for the next episode. I watched episode 5 and 6 together, so I'll comment here to ensure I don't drop any spoilers. What an amazing emotional roller coaster we take with Jessica and Trish's relationship in these 2 hours. I love watching these two women working off each other on my TV. They have great chemistry together, and then we add Trish's mom and we get solid gold. I felt I finally understood who Trish is when she was trying to explain herself to her mom. I'm heartbroken for both her and her mother. Still not a fan of Eric and Jessica hooking up, but he got a lot more interesting in these 2 hours. Not a fan of where Malcolm seems to be headed. His storyline was pretty good until that last moment with Eric's sister. Oh, totally agree with you, Mike. Jerry's storyline might jump the shark, depending on why she wants the information on the serial killer. If she now chooses to defend Salinger against the police and Jessica, I'm worried. Uh-oh, Mike. That's where we just talked about this entire episode. We might not hear from Mike for a while.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike. This is why we like telling people to give us feedback on the episodes, because you get the same peace and shock that we do, which is we say all this and go, I really hope this does. Literally, it happens. You're like, oh.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. You've done a Defenders TV podcast right there. I do like that even though Jerry is defending Salinger at the opening of the episode, within about 4 lines, she realizes I might have made a mistake here. When Salinger accuses Jessica and the masked vigilante of possibly being part of the Take Back the Night movement, which he uses as an offensive statement, and you can tell that instantly gets Jerry's back up. So I like that it plays out that way. If she's going to choose to defend Salinger to promote her organisation, that it may flip very quickly back to her trying to distance herself from a really bad choice.
Yeah, 100%.
And finally, Mike says, in my opinion, Kilgrave made season 1 amazing, and the lack of Kilgrave crippled season 2. Salinger's presence has powered up season 3 for me.
Yeah, I know a lot of people thought season 2 kind of took a dip because we didn't have the big bad. I personally didn't, as neither did my hosts. But I can see how Salinger has reinvigorated a lot of the audience in that he is a unpowered Kilgrave, if you will, but just on a different level.
Yeah, I like that they took a few episodes to re-establish the team and the crew as to where they all were before we really got into Salinger as well. So that probably helped to really say, this is Jessica Jones as a series, and now we're giving you your big bad. So that was kind of cool. Thanks so much, Mike.
Yes, thank you, Mike. But let's move on with some feedback for the same episode. Robert Phillips says, so much juicy stuff in this episode. Absolutely love the shameless trip to kinky sex to save Eric. Via the power of kissing, of course, and the unfolding revelations of abusive childhoods. This is obviously a reoccurring Marvel theme, and here we have a villain who was destroyed by his abusive dad. But the daughter made saviour as she chose to overcome the effects of a violent, controlling mother. The undertones of this do upset me a bit, that you should forgive and be kind and loving to your abusive mother and she will repent, but I see how it aids Trish's stories. I'm with you on that, Rob. We've talked about this a few times. 2 more bits really caught me off guard about Trish. Her response to being outed by Jessica and the negativity of her mother, and then the growth of Stephen since his encouragement from the more traditional closet. Always enjoy seeing Malcolm, but have to admit to feeling very disappointed in his behaviour at the end of this episode. Yeah, I'm right there with you on both of those points again, Rob. This is definitely a... these 2 characters so far up to the end of episode 6 are not in the best of places and not doing the best of things. Yeah. No, there's some really good stuff in this episode, definitely, and I'm just so intrigued by how far they're pushing Malcolm, and I'm so intrigued to see what Trish is going to do. She is just chomping at the bit to be the superhero, and to be outed to her mother. It's just this thing where it's like bringing her back to ground again. Jessica did throw her out of the window, I suppose, which got her back to ground pretty quickly. But it just kind of brought her back to the ground again, going, you need to tell your mother about this. It's really important. Your mother's a very controlling person, and she's going to be in your life constantly, so you need to tell her about it. I know Bob was saying there about the undertone of it being to forgive and be kind to your loving and abusive mother, and she'll repent. I'm still not too sure, because we do have that moment with Trish where she effectively says, I still remember everything you've done to me, and I'll never forget about it. But I still want you in my life. So I don't know whether she's forgiven her or whether her mother's too repentant. I think they're working on their relationship a bit. So it's intriguing, but I'm expecting a little more from that again in the future. Yep, So that's all our feedback for this episode. Don't forget, you can email through your feedback on any of the episodes, just making sure you title up which one it is about in the subject line, to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or of course on our major master feedback account, which is feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. You can also join our Facebook group to discuss everything Jessica Jones, Defenders, and of course upcoming Spider-Man at facebook.com/groups/DefendersTVpodcast. We're also over on the Twitters. If you fancy sending us a tweet or just want to join in some general comic book revelry, join us at DefendersCast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, fellow Defenders. We'll be back with our next review of Jessica Jones Season 3, Episode 8, aka Camera Friendly, really soon. Send your feedback for that one. Myself, John, and Chris, I think, are all going to be together for that one.
Yes, because you know who's the most camera friendly of us all? None of us, because we'd crack the lens. But good thing these podcasts aren't on the camera, so we're all good.
Absolutely. That's why we do podcasting and not YouTube videos.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for joining us, fellow Defenders. Talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.
It did. It
So
really
good.
did. This was the slow. This was, I don't know how to put it. It was almost like the part 2 of the season, but it didn't. See, this is the weird. Sorry, I literally am getting excited.
Okay. You hear her use that term a couple of times in this episode, that famous lawyer term of allegedly. And effectively, when it works for her, she will allow a This is what happens when it's this hot.
Yeah, I know, like it's starting to
all
get...
my words.
I can't even open the window as well because there's kids playing outside.
Not good. Right. But there are a couple of clues very quickly in that she may have put her trust in the wrong person. We hear Salinger go on screen in front of the television cameras and talk about the fact that maybe Jessica's a female vindicator. And talk about maybe the fact that Jessica's a female... Stop saying that there. And talk about Jessica maybe being a feminist vindicator.
So it's my job to ensure that I have to basically find everything out about Salinger, even the stuff he's not hiding you, so that you're aware of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry. It's getting warm.
Oh, no. I know, man.
And then he agrees that he's going to look into her.
Just take that again, mate. Deep breath. It'll help.
Yeah. This is interesting. We are not built for this heat.
No.
Because it does take her... It takes Jessica to Nathan's parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
I got an ice cream van outside. Do, ice cream van. There, it's gone.
While it is shorthand, I think it's really good.
Yeah. Can you hear that?
Get an ice cream, Chris.
But can you hear it?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I hear everything, Chris.
Tell me when you can't hear it anymore.
I can no longer hear it.